Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told This podcast, where we bring you captivating stories that you just can't get enough of. And today, we're going to take you deep, deep into a world of hidden fortunes, shadowy figures, and a leak so big it shook the globe. The Panama Papers.
Sounds exciting.
Oh, it is. Picture this. A law firm in Panama, Mossack Fonseca. Not exactly a name you'd see on a billboard, right?
Not really, no.
But behind the scenes, they were the puppet masters for the world's elite, helping them create these things called shell companies. You familiar with shell
Oh,
companies?
yeah, shell companies are fascinating. They're like these phantom businesses existing mostly on paper. And they're often set up in these places we call tax havens.
Tax havens, like a tropical paradise for money.
Kinda, yeah. But with a lot less sunshine and a lot more secrecy. These are countries with super private financial rules, making it nearly impossible to figure out who really owns the money inside those shell companies.
So it's like having a secret vault that no one can find.
Exactly. And Mossack Fonseca, they were the key makers to these vaults, helping everyone from powerful politicians and celebrities to, well, let's just say less than savory characters. They were the architects of financial secrecy for decades.
But then, boom, millions of documents surface, blowing the lid off this whole operation. How did this massive leak even happen?
That's where our story takes a thrilling turn. It all started with a mysterious source, known only as John Doe.
John Doe, like a character straight out of a crime novel.
Right. This anonymous whistleblower contacted a German newspaper, Süddeutsche Zeitung, and started feeding them these top-secret documents. No one knows who John Doe is, but they had access to the heart of Mossack Fonseca.
Must have been a field day for those journalists.
Oh, a total bombshell. Süddeutsche Zeitung quickly realized they were sitting on a mountain of information way too much for them to handle alone. So they called in the heavy hitters, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, or ICIJ for short.
The ICIJ.
Yep. Hundreds of journalists from around the world working together in secret, like a global detective agency, trying to piece together this giant puzzle.
So they had this massive data dump. What did it actually reveal? Was everything in these offshore dealings illegal?
Well, here's the thing. Having an offshore company isn't automatically a crime. There are legitimate reasons to use them, like for international businesses or estate planning. But what the Panama Papers exposed was a pattern of these shell companies being used for some seriously shady stuff.
Like what? Give us the juicy details.
Okay, so we're talking tax evasion on a massive scale. Individuals and corporations using these offshore havens to hide their fortunes from their own governments, dodging taxes left and right. We're talking billions, maybe even trillions of dollars in lost tax revenue worldwide.
Wow, that's a ridiculous amount of money.
Oh, it's mind-boggling. And it wasn't just about lost taxes. The Panama Papers also revealed a darker side, a world of money laundering, where dirty money from things like drug trafficking and arms dealing was being cleaned up through these offshore accounts, making it look squeaky clean.
Hold on, now this is ringing a bell. Weren't there some pretty big names caught up in this mess? I vaguely remember something about world leaders and celebrities.
You got it. The Panama Papers didn't play favorites. They revealed the offshore dealings of everyone from heads of state to famous actors. The prime ministers of Iceland and Pakistan, even Jackie Chan popped up in the documents.
Jackie Chan, whoa.
Yeah, even people linked to that massive gold heist, the Brinks Mat robbery. They'd laundered their loot through Mossack Fonseca.
This is like a real-life thriller unfolding.
You said it. And what's even crazier is the lengths these people went to hide their assets. Complex webs of trusts, foundations, shell companies layered on top of each other, spread across multiple countries. It's mind-blowing.
It's amazing how much effort went into hiding all this. So
Yeah.
how did they actually pull it off? What were some of their sneaky tactics?
One trick was using nominee directors. These are basically stand-ins, often lawyers or accountants, who are officially listed as the company directors, even though they have zero control over what's really happening.
This was like a decoy.
Exactly, a smokescreen to hide the real owner. And that's just one example. The Panama Papers revealed a whole arsenal of techniques designed to exploit legal loopholes and keep those transactions hidden.
It's incredible how much work went into this.
It really shows how determined they were to keep their financial activities secret.
And the fact that this was happening globally, with people from all walks of life involved, it really shows just how widespread this problem was.
Absolutely. The Panama Papers weren't just about one law firm going rogue. They exposed a global network of banks, accountants, lawyers, all these professionals who helped make these shady dealings possible. It was a huge wake-up call about how the global financial system really works, or doesn't work, depending on how you see it.
It's pretty disturbing when you think about it. We're going to dig even deeper into the Panama Papers after a quick break. We'll explore the fallout from this massive leak and tackle the ethical questions it raises. Stay tuned.
The Panama Papers, they really pulled back the curtain on this whole system that had been hiding in the shadows for so long. Really forced the world to face some uncomfortable truths.
Yeah, for sure. I remember there were protests, outrage all over the globe after those documents came out. People were demanding answers, wanting someone to be held accountable.
Oh, absolutely. Public anger was boiling over, especially towards anyone who seemed to be benefiting from this whole offshore haven system.
Yeah.
Wasn't just about whether it was legal or not, it was about fairness. People were wondering why the super rich got to play by a different set of rules, dodging taxes while everyone else struggled to make ends meet.
So did anything actually change? I mean, besides a few people resigning and some investigations, did the Panama Papers actually lead to any real reforms?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's not a simple answer. There have been some positive steps. The Panama Papers definitely pushed international organizations like the OECD and the G20 to step up their efforts in fighting tax evasion and money laundering. We saw new regulations being put in place, like the Common Reporting Standard, which is designed to make countries share more financial information with each other.
So are countries actually sharing more information about where the money's going?
To some extent, yeah. The goal is to make it much harder for individuals and corporations to hide their money offshore and avoid paying what they owe. But these reforms, they're still a work in progress. It's a constant battle.
Yeah, I can imagine the people who benefit from the current system aren't going down without a fight.
Oh, there's definitely pushback, especially from those who have a lot to lose if things become more transparent. They've got a lot of influence, a lot of money to throw around. It's a tough fight.
It's kind of depressing to think that even after something as huge as the Panama Papers, these shady dealings are probably still going on.
It's a reality check, that's for sure. But it's important to remember that changing a system as big and complex as the global financial system takes time. It takes persistence. The Panama Papers, they were a major blow, but it's a long game.
So where do we go from here? What can ordinary people do to push for more transparency, more accountability in the financial world?
Well, knowledge is power, right? The more people understand about offshore finance and how it affects everyone, the more likely they are to demand change. Supporting organizations like the ICIJ, the journalists who dug deep into the Panama Papers, that's huge.
And voting for politicians who actually want to crack down on tax havens and financial secrecy, that's got to help too.
Absolutely. Making your voice heard, demanding a fairer and more transparent system, that's what's going to make a difference.
It makes you think about what motivated John Doe to leak those documents in the first place. What were they hoping to achieve?
Well, they never explicitly said, but in a statement released through the ICIJ, John Doe talked about being concerned about the growing gap between the rich and the poor. They felt that these tax havens were a big part of that problem, making inequality worse. It seems like they believed exposing all this was crucial to creating a more just world.
It reminds you that behind all those fancy financial terms and legal loopholes, there are real people being affected. The Panama Papers weren't just about numbers on a page. It was about the lives of everyday people impacted by this hidden flow of wealth and power.
Exactly. And that human element is what makes this story so powerful. It's about choices, the systems we create, and how those systems shape the world. And speaking of impact, the Panama Papers had some serious consequences for the people involved.
Yeah. Beyond the initial shock, what actually happened?
Oh, the fallout was massive. In some cases, it led to some pretty dramatic changes in leadership and policy. For example, Iceland's prime minister, he was forced to resign because of the public pressure after the leaks revealed his family's connections to offshore holdings.
That's a pretty big deal. Public outrage actually led to political change. Were there other examples like that?
Definitely. A bunch of countries launched investigations into individuals and companies named in the Panama Papers. There were arrests, convictions, and billions of dollars recovered through fines, back taxes, and settlements.
So the Panama Papers really forced governments to take the issue of offshore tax evasion seriously.
They definitely put the issue front and center, made it much harder for governments to ignore.
What about Mossack Fonseca, the law firm at the heart of it all? Did they face any consequences?
Well, after the leak, they were under a microscope, faced tons of legal challenges. They denied any wrongdoing, but the damage was done. Their reputation was in tatters, and they ended up shutting down completely in 2018.
Kind of poetic justice, isn't it?
Yeah.
The firm that built its business on secrecy ultimately crumbled when its secrets were exposed to the world.
It definitely shows that even the most powerful institutions are not invincible. When the truth comes out, there are consequences.
This is such a fascinating story. It makes you wonder what other secrets are still out there, hidden in the complexities of the global financial system.
It's a question a lot of us are asking. The Panama Papers were a major breakthrough, but they were really just a glimpse into a world that's still largely hidden from view.
It's both intriguing and a little scary to think about how much we don't know. But it also highlights the vital role of investigative journalism, holding power to account.
Oh, absolutely. The Panama Papers wouldn't have happened without the hard work of hundreds of journalists from all over the world. It was a remarkable collaboration.
It's a reminder that even in the face of enormous power and secrecy, the truth has a way of finding its way out.
It does. The Panama Papers were a turning point. They showed that even the most elaborate schemes can be uncovered.
This has been an incredible journey through the world of hidden fortunes, shadowy figures, and the ripple effects of the Panama Papers.
It really has.
But our deep dive isn't over yet. There's still more to uncover. We'll be back after a short break to explore some of the most unbelievable, stranger-than-fiction cases that came out of the Panama Papers, involving everyone from dictators to movie stars. You won't want to miss it. Okay, so we've dug into the hows and whys of offshore finance and the global shockwaves from the Panama Papers, but what about the people behind it all? Any crazy stories or unexpected characters that emerged from those leaked documents?
Oh, absolutely. One thing that really stood out was just how audacious and creative some of those schemes were. I mean, people went to extraordinary lengths, bending over backward to hide their wealth. They came up with some seriously elaborate and convoluted setups.
Like what? I'm picturing secret Swiss bank accounts, briefcases full of cash, the whole shebang.
Well, get this, one document revealed a company officially owned by a homeless man living on the streets of Panama. This guy was listed as the sole shareholder and director of a company holding millions of dollars in assets.
Wait, seriously? A homeless man owning a multi-million-dollar company? That sounds like something straight out of a movie.
It does, right? But that's how these schemes often work. They take advantage of vulnerable people, using them as pawns to hide the real owners.
It's a harsh reminder of how power plays into all of this. The wealthy pulling strings, manipulating the system, while those with less power end up bearing the brunt of the consequences.
You hit the nail on the head. The Panama Papers exposed a world where the lines between what's legal and what's right get really blurry, where the chase for wealth and power often overshadows any sense of ethics.
It's a bit discouraging, honestly, to think about how widespread this kind of behavior is. So did any of these people or organizations actually face real consequences for their actions?
Oh, yeah. In many cases, the Panama Papers had some serious legal and reputational fallout. We saw investigations launched, people arrested, assets seized. Governments all over the world had to take notice and start cracking down on these shady practices.
So it wasn't just a wave of public anger. It actually led to some real action.
For sure. The Panama Papers were a game changer. They forced governments and international organizations to tighten regulations and work together to fight financial crime.
That's good to hear. But as we talked about earlier, the fight's not over, right? There's still work to be done to create a truly fair and transparent global financial system.
Absolutely. The Panama Papers were a huge step forward for transparency, but it's an ongoing process. We have to keep pushing for reforms, closing loopholes, holding those who abuse the system accountable.
And it's not just about governments and institutions doing their part. It's about all of us staying informed, thinking critically, and demanding better from our leaders.
Couldn't agree more. We all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world.
This deep dive into the Panama Papers has been a real eye-opener. It exposed a lot of darkness in global finance, but it also gave me a sense of hope that change is possible.
It's a good reminder that even in the face of all that power and secrecy, the truth has a way of emerging. And when it does, it can really shake things up.
Thanks for taking us on this journey with you. It's been a fascinating and really thought-provoking look at a complex and important issue.
It's been my pleasure, and I hope everyone listening feels inspired to keep asking questions, challenging assumptions, and pushing for a better future.
And on that note, we wrap up our deep dive into the Panama Papers. We hope you found this exploration informative and engaging. And if you enjoy this journey into the world of hidden fortunes and global intrigue, be sure to subscribe to Tell Me More Stories Told This podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and thanks for listening.